Greetings, Iain from RTO here. Hope you're all well and welcome to Wednesday Marathon. And today we have got a bit of prog for you, and we're going to look at Renaissance. Now Renaissance, of course, came out of when the Yardbirds split. So basically in 1968 Jimmy Page formed the new Yardbirds, which of course went on to be Led Zeppelin. But Keith Relf and Jim McCarthy went their own way. They had this little acoustic duo called Together. They released a song called Henry's Coming Home and didn't do a carrot. So in 1969 they had a rethink and come up with a new group devoted to experimentation with rock, folk and classical forms. So the original lineup of Renaissance came in was Keith Relf and Jim McCartney, and joining them was John Hawkin, Louis Sanemo and Relf's sister Jane. But that changed. In come the great Annie Haslam and Michael Dunford, and the rest is history. So they've had 13 albums. They was around until about 83, split up for many years, and then had a bit of a comeback. And I think they're still touring now, so it's good that they did this. So we're going to have a look at their 13 albums to date. So coming in at number 13, we go to the 11th album that was released in 1983, and it's called Timeline. And this was the last one before they did they disbanded in 1987. So playing on this one is Annie Haslam doing the vocals, John Camp on the bass, Michael Dunford on guitars and backing vocals. Additional musicians on here, we've got a number of drummers, which Peter Barron and a certain Ian Mosley from Marillion. On keyboards we had Peter Gosling, Nick McManus and Eddie Hardin. Saxophone was supplied by Bimbo Acock, and Dave Thompson was on trumpet. First track on here is called Flight. Certainly not a classic Renaissance song, a little bit too poppy for me, very 80s sounding, but Annie sounds great on that. She's really singing well still. Then we get Missing Persons. Now this is a very sort of mediocre pop self song. It's okay, it's not special, but it's listenable. Charging Boulevard. I don't like this track. This is too poppy, it's too experimental, and they were going into areas that they weren't renowned for. Then we get Richard 9, a very poppy, and it just does not resemble anything that's Renaissance. The Entertainer. This one isn't too bad. It's got some nice guitar work from Michael on it and a great vocal from Annie. Then we get Electric Avenue. Probably one of the worst songs ever by Renaissance. It's not very good in my opinion. I can't describe it, I just don't like it. You can say the same about Magic. Not interested. But the next track, Distance Horizons, probably the best track on the album. It actually resembles something Renaissance. It's not too bad. Orient Express, this is very funky than prog. It's alright. And then Autotech is another shocking track, to be quite honest. There's nothing good about it. This is not a very good album in my opinion. I'm so glad they reformed, because if this was the album they were going out on, it was just not very good. There's nothing here that really floats my boat. The only positive thing I can say about it is Annie Haslam's singing's good. So I'll give this one an RTO ranking of 3 out of 10. Okay, coming in at number 12, we have the 10th album from 1981, Camera Camera. This is the first album that featured Peter Gosling and Peter Barron. So it's Annie Haslam on lead and backing vocals, Michael Dunford on guitars, Peter Gosling on keyboards, John Camp on bass and Peter Barron on drums. Opens up with the title track, Camera Camera. When you get the cameras clicking at the start, you're half expecting Duran Duran's Girls on Film, but this is rather limp, although the bass line from John Camp is pretty good. Then we get a track called Fairies Living at the Bottom of the Garden. Start of this is really good. It's got a harpsichord thing. I thought, oh, this is going back to classic Renaissance, but no. We get this this horrible 80s sounding nonsense. Then we get Remember, Betty Thatcher's writing on this. Now Betty Thatcher of course wrote a lot of stuff for Renaissance. Now this isn't too bad, sort of proper Renaissance, except some cheesy horrible keyboard sound. The rest of the song is what you expect from Renaissance. Now then we get a song called Bonjour Swan Song. It's not on the British release, but I thought I'd mention it. It's not very good. They tried to do another Northern Lights and it just didn't work. Then we get Tyrant Tallulah. This isn't too bad. My favourite track on here, it's got a great bass line from John Camp. Some nice guitar work from Michael. And of course Annie's great vocal. Then we get Ochi-san. Not too bad. Nice vocal from Annie. Then we get Jigsaw. I like this track. It's a bit soulful instead of pop, but it's okay. Running Away From You. Then we go back to this shocking nonsense again. Then we get Ukraine Ways, which is another good track. Got some great guitar work from Michael Dunford in it. Solid track. There's some really good tracks on this album, especially the ones penned by Becky Thatcher, of course. The others are pretty weak. You know Becky Thatcher's lyrics, and she was a great songwriter, so I shall give this one a RTO ranking of 7 out of 10. Okay then, coming in at number 11 is the 13th album. Now this was released in 2013 under the name Grandine El Vento, and then when it was re-released in 2014 it was called This Symphony of Light. And on here we have Annie Haslam doing the vocals, of course, Michael Dunford on the guitars, Rave Taser on piano, Jason Hart keyboards, David Day keys on bass, double bass, lead and backing vocals, Frank Pagango on drums. Additional people, we've got Ian Anderson, no less, on the flute on track 5, John Wetton on the bass and on the vocals, Tom Breslin additional keyboards and a sort of music arrangements, Andy Spiller. Opens up with a track called Symphony of Light. Great track, really like this, lovely keyboard sound. Annie's voice is fantastic on that track. Waterfall, it's alright, nothing special on that one. Then we get Grandine El Vento. It's okay, some nice keyboards, good solo from on the keyboards there, and a good vocal from Annie. Porcelain, not keen on this one. I just don't like the bongos on it. My favourite track is though Cry to the World, and it's not just because Ian Anderson plays flute on it. I think this track really harks back to the good old days. It's a really good track, fantastic vocal from Annie. Air of Drama, love the start of this. It's got some harpsichord on the flute, it's pretty good. Blood, Silver Light, Moonlight, Nights song, good vocal from John Wetton. Whenever he sings on anything he always gives it a little boost. Then we get the Mystique and the Muse. I love the start to this. It's a bit eerie, Twilight Zone sort of thing. Really good track as well. Tonight, lovely vocal from Annie on this. The piano work is good. It's not a bad track. Immortal Beloved. Nothing wrong with this track. It's very, very pleasant. Renaissance Man. A really good track. Annie's vocals are good. Nice way to end the album. Now, I think this is a very good album. If this is to be the last Renaissance album, it's a better one to go out than on Timeline. This is it more old style Renaissance. I'm happy if this is one because it's a very pleasant album. So I shall give this one an RTO ranking at 7.5. Time for a drink. Okay, then coming in at number 10, we've got the 12th album, released in 2001, Tuscany. After that long hiatus, the original members Annie Haslam and Michael Dunford, Terence Sutherland and John Talent came out to record this album, assisted by Roy Wood. John Talent was unavailable for some of the sessions, so they were replaced by Mr. Mickey Simmons. So the band is Annie Haslam on the lead vocals and backing vocals, Michael Dunford guitars, Terence Sutherland on the drums, Mickey Simmons come in as well, and John Talent on a couple of the tracks as well. Roy Wood from Wizard and ELO does bass on tracks 2 and 3 and keyboards and does some percussion as well, and Alex Card plays the bass. First track on this one is called A Lady from Tuscany. A really good track. I love the keyboard at the beginning of this. It's a bit of a sort of poppy prog and a great vocal from Annie. Pearls of Wisdom comes next. Nice track. I like the sort of the choral stuff. Roy Wood done the arrangement on that. Pretty good. The orchestral stuff. Then we get Eva's Pond. I quite like this track. Lovely vocal from Annie. Then Dear Landseer. Again, a track that really goes back to the good old days. I love the tin whistle on here. It's really, really good. In the Sunshine. Another pleasant track. It's not outstanding, but it's really nice to listen to. In My Life, sorry. Nice track, love the piano work on this. The Race is a good track. My favourite bit of this is in the middle you get the keyboards and strings working wonderfully together and intertwining. Dolphin's Prayer, it's alright. Life in Brazil, pretty cool track, I like that one. And then we've got my favourite track is 1000 Roses. The start of this is very Enya. I love it because it's got them lovely keyboard swirls you expect in prog. It's a very, very good track to end the album. Okay, this was Renaissance's first album in 17 years, and it's a pretty good one. They've gone back to what they were known for. They've obviously gone away from that poppy stuff. It's more progressive, and I quite like this album. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 7.8. Okay, then coming in at number 9, we go way back to 1969 and the debut album, just called Renaissance. So on here is Jane Relf doing the lead vocals, Keith Rolfe on guitars and harmonica, John Hawking on piano, Louis Sinamo on bass, Jim McCarthy on drums. First track on here is Kings and Queens. This is a really good track, but it just got this stop and start feel to it. The piano work from John Hawking is brilliant, but it didn't gel. It's a good track, but it didn't run smoothly. Innocence. Again, the work by John Hawken is very, very good. The only thing with this one, it takes a little bit of time to get going, but once it ends, it's worth waiting for. Then we get Island. I love this track. It's a lovely vocal from Jane. She had a lovely voice. Then we got my favourite track, Wanderer. Some great piano on this. The drumming from Jim is fantastic. I love the harpsichord. Really adds to this track. Bullet. Now this is quite a long track. It's 11 minutes. I find this one a little bit tedious. It's very disjointed and doesn't flow. It was the last track on the album. It's a good album. It's a good start. You could see where they wanted to go. They made this lineup made another album, and then when Annie Haslam and Michael Dunford come in, it really took on what this was doing and took it to the next level. But there's nothing wrong with this album. It's a good listen, and I'm going to give it an RTO ranking of 8 out of 10. Okay, then coming in at number 8, we get a 1971, and it's the second album, Illusion. This was the last time this album sort of had this lineup on, and it's John Hawken again, Keith Relf, Jane Relf, Louis Sonamo, Jim McCarty. Terry Crow does some vocals on this one. Michael Dunford makes an appearance on guitars. Neil Corner's on the bass, Terry Slade drums, and Don Shing does some extra keyboards. First track on here is called Love Goes On. This is really good. They've sort of developed from their debut albums. The harmonies are better. It's a lot more smoother. Really good little track. Golden Thread. I think this is one of the best tracks that this lineup for Renaissance did. The Terry's vocal on this is excellent. It's a good track, and again they've worked out the smoothness and the continuity. Love Is All. Now this is one of the first tracks Betty Thatcher collaborated on. I think it's really good. Great vocals on that. Mr. Pine, Michael Dunford's first sort of writing for it. 7 minutes. This is a great track. The sound they got on this takes you back to that Elizabethan era of England. The keyboard solo is absolutely brilliant on this. Face of Yesterday. It's okay. It's not one of the strong tracks on here. Then we got Past Orbits of Dust. This is the best track on this. One of the best tracks that this line did. Jazzy sort of feel to it as well. Love this one. That was the last track. This album I think had a bit more direction than the debut. The tracks are good on here. It's a shame this lineup didn't make up anymore, because I think they were going in the right direction. But it's definitely the best album of this lineup for sure. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 8.3. Okay, then coming in at number 7, go to the 9th album, Azure Door, released in 1979. I think I've pronounced that right. So the band at the time was Annie Haslam, Michael Dunford, John Touts, John Camp, Terry Sullivan. First track on here is Jekyll and Hyde. Good track. I love the arrangements on this. Some great vocal from Annie. Then we get The Winter Tree. Some really nice backing vocals on this. Great song. That's what I love about this band. The vocals and the backing vocals are always brilliant. Only Angels Have Wings. The start of this has got a little bit of feels like a Mike Oldfield, and it's John Cam singing on this, and he does a good job of that one. Golden Key. This is the first sort of poppy song I think that they went into. I think it's quite a nice track actually. Then we get Forever Changing. Great vocal from Annie. The backing vocals are going to superb, and I love Michael's gentle acoustic guitar. Secret. Mission, very solid track. But Annie's voice on here is just so soothing. If you've got a headache, I know you don't want to listen to music, but put that on. Her voice just makes it all go away. Then we get a track called Caliander and Magical Island. Love the guitar from Michael on this. Absolute superb stuff. Friends, it's a good track. Some really nice harmonies on that one. Then we get my favourite track on here, The Flood at Lyons. It's one of them good old, lots of them prog elements like keyboards, some great drumming. Fantastic track to end the album. For me, this is the best of the last of the really good albums before they split up in the 80s. There's signs of change on this album, but the classic sounding ones are fantastic. So I'm going to give this one an RTO ranking of 8.5. Really dry today. I do not know why. Okay, coming in at number 6 is the album that really turned me on to Renaissance. Came out in 1978 and it's a song for all seasons. On here is Annie Haslam, Michael Dunford, John Tout, John Camp and Terry Sullivan again. Additional musicians, we've got the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, conducted by Harry Rabowitz, and Lewis Clark from ELO does the orchestral arrangements as well. Opening out, love this song. It's got a moody blues feel to it. That's probably why I like it. I think it's got a really good tone. I like that track a lot. Day of the Daydreamer, one of the longer tracks on here. I love the drumming on this from Terry. He's a good drummer. The keyboards are brilliant on this. It really... John Tout's doing his Tony Banks from Cinema Show on it. It's a great track. You got the strings and that lovely keyboard sound. Great track. Closer Than Yesterday, one of the more acoustic sounding, so we're going back to the original sort of sound. That folky sound, absolutely amazing. Sounds very Clanad in places, but it's a strong track. Kindness at the end. The keyboards on this are brilliant from John, and Annie's sort of does the backing of vocals on this because it's sung by John Camp. Really good. Back Home Again, once again. It's alright, it's not one of my favourites on the album. She Is Love, it's nice, it's got some nice piano work on it, but it just needs a little bit more oomph. And then we get the brilliant Northern Lights. Now this is the first thing I ever heard by Renaissance. Saw it on Top of the Pops and fell in love with the song, and I've been a fan since, basically. Although I was only 12, I just loved this song. I loved Annie's vocal on this. Such a catchy tune. And then the last track is the title track, A Song for All Season. Brilliant song. Brilliant. Love the guitar in this, such a great prog epic. It goes from dramatic to gentleness, and the finale, I love the horns and the brass. It's an excellent track. So basically this is the first Renaissance album I brought when I could go and buy albums and had money. It's not their best album, but it's got a very special place for me because it's the one that got me into the band, but it's a damn good album. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 9 out of 10. Okay, coming in at number 5, we get to the third album from 1972, and it's Prologue. Now this is when the new management came in, a different lineup. So this was the first album for Annie Haslam, John Tout, John Camp and Terence Sullivan. There was Mike Parsons, but he sadly got killed in a car accident, so they had to replace him, of course. And he came in. Rob Hendry came in as a last-minute replacement. and helped them do the album, but he soon left. So on here we've got Annie Haslam lead vocals, Rob Hendry on electric and acoustic guitars, Don Tout on acoustic, John Camp on bass, and Terry Sullivan on drums. First track on here, although he's not playing on here, Michael Dunford does contribute. He writes, like he wrote the first one, Prologue. This is quite a jazzed up piece of piano music written by Michael Dunford. Excellent track. Kiev, love this again, lots of nice harmonies. The keyboards on this are really good from John Tout. Excellent. Sounds of the Sea, written by Dunford and Becky Thatcher. A great vocal from Annie on this. Again, I love the piano work from John Tout. Spare Some Love, very mediocre start, but once it gets going, it's amazing. Great drumming here from Terry Sullivan. Then John Camp comes in. Wonderful track. Bound for Infinity. Really nice song. This is my second favourite track on the album. Now this sort of arrangement reminds me of an Irish singer called Mary Black. Now if you don't know who Mary Black is, that's Mary Black. She's a great Irish singer and I love that track. Then we got Raja Khan. This is brilliant. This is probably the first proper prog track, because up till then it's been more folky. I love the keyboard and the guitars. It sort of intertwines, and you get that lovely high pitched keyboard, which is brilliant. My favourite track. Yeah, change of lineup, a change of direction, going to more towards the prog and leaving the folk behind. It's a very good album. Play this quite a lot, and I'll give this one an RTO ranking of 9.3. This was getting so difficult in this ranking because I love all these classic Renaissance albums. Okay, then coming in at number 4, we got a 1977 now, and the 7th album, Novella. And playing on here we've got Annie Haslam, Michael Dunford, John Tout, John Camp, Terry Sullivan, and additional orchestral arrangements by Richard Hewson. First track is one of my favourite tracks by Renaissance, and it's Can You Hear Me, a 13-minute epic. The middle piece of the guitar work is so freaky, then you get the gentle vocals. It's just a wonderful piece of music. I really love that track. The Sisters, what I like about this one is Terry's drumming. Solid drums from Terry. Really is the highlight of that track. Minus Man, Michael's guitars are wonderful, and Annie's vocals just amazing. The Captive Heart, love this track. Lovely harmonies on this one. It's great when you've got really good singers in the band that can do these wonderful harmonies. Touching Once, It's So Hard to Keep. One of their great epics again. Love the vocals. It's a jazz sort of thing. The bass line from John Camp's brilliant. Great way to end the album. Again, a great album. Not a bad track on this. Put it on and let it go. You gotta play the whole album. You don't put the odd track on. It's just a brilliant album. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 9.4. Number 3, got the 5th album from 1974, Turn of the Cards. And on here we have got Annie Haslam, Michael Dunford, John Camp, John Tout, Terry Sullivan. The orchestral stuff is done by Jimmy Horowitz. First track is the brilliant Running Hard. Very dramatic and classical. I do love the bit in the middle and when the piano thing is good. Terry is brilliant on here. I think Terry's drumming is again the highlight. He does a great job on this. It's just an amazing piece of music. I Think of You. Michael's guitars on this are brilliant, and I love the vocals as well. Things I Don't Understand. Another long track on here. It's a bit more jazzy than the previous one. It's got some lovely harmonising vocals, and Annie sounds great on this. Black Flame, love the percussion on here from Terry. That soft harpsichord sound makes it a fantastic track. Cold Is Being, love the church organ on this. And the vocal from Annie sounds like it was recorded in a church, to be quite honest. It is wonderful. Mother Russia, another long track, superb track on here. It's got that real feel Russian to it. I love Annie's vocal on this, but she's not singing, if you get my drift. And the piano and the guitar work just sort of ooze greatness, and it's a great way to end the track. Another fantastic album, top to bottom, solid stuff. So I should give this one an RTO ranking of 9.5. Okay, the top two, there's not much between them. I'd say the width of one of these. That's how much there is between them. With a fiend. So coming in at number 2 is the fourth album from 1973, and it is Ashes Are Burning. Annie Haslam, John Tout, John Camp, Terence Sutherland, Michael Dunford, Andy Powell does a bit of a guitar solo on track 6, and Richard Hewson is back doing some strings. First track, Can't You Understand, another epic to start the album. John Tout is brilliant on this, and I love also that sort of monastery sat vocals and the wonderful guitar of Michael Dunford. Brilliant, and you get the finishes with a bit of orchestral stuff. It's a really good track. Then we get Let It Grow. I think Annie sounds wonderful on this, and John's keyboard on this is pretty solid. On the Frontier, this is written by Jim McCarthy and Becky Thatcher. I love this track. Great start from Michael on the acoustic. Then halfway through you get that lovely piano and drumming. It's really what I call that into prog. Really good stuff. Carpet of the Sun, acoustic guitar here from Michael. He's such a good guitar player. It's just great. At the Harbour, this has got some of my favourite work from John Tout on this. It's eerie. The bass line it comes up is fantastic. The piano is very good as well. Lovely choral vocal from Annie. Then we get my favourite track, and it's the last track, and it's the brilliant Ashes Are Burning. This is just brilliant. Starts off with the howling wind, and then you get the harpsichord, the piano, the drumming from Terry, and you got organ solos, keyboard solos, a great guitar solo from this chap Andy Powell. Really nice song. It's, you can see if it's got that where Marillion and Genesis get their ideas from. It's all that sort of sound, and like great prog tracks, it just fades away into nothing. I think this is the first album by Renaissance and they really nailed the prog. It's absolutely superb. I think Ashes Are Burning is probably the best thing they've ever done, and I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 9.9. But my number one album is it's the sixth album from 1975, and I can never pronounce this. Scheherazade and Other Stories. On here is Annie Haslam, Michael Dunford, John Tout, John Camp, Terry Sullivan, Tony Cox and the LSO Orchestra. Opens up with the brilliant Trip to the Fair. Oh, what a track. The piano work from John Tout, absolutely amazing. Then you get that really lovely rich John Camp bass line. The track builds up, the strumming comes in. It's a fantastic track to start this album. Then we get the Vultures Fly High, short but brilliant track. The piano bit reminds me of a little bit from Mike Oldfield's Platinum, and the bass line on here from John Camp is amazing. Ocean Gypsy, absolute classic from Renaissance. That lovely gentle start, you get that sort of orchestral feel, the piano, some great drumming from Terry on this. Absolutely brilliant. And then you get the brilliant songs of the Scheherazade or whatever, split up into little pieces. We get Fanfare, the Betrayal, the Salt and Love theme, the Young Princess and the Princess, as told by Scheherazade, Festival Preparations, Fugue of the Salt and the Festival and Finale. What can you say about this bit of music? This, for a start, is probably Annie's best performance vocalised. It's very ambient in places. It's got aggression. It's got some great guitar work. The keyboards are super on this. Reminds me a little bit of how wonderful this is, how Grendel came about. It's got all the elements of what prog is about. It's my second favourite track by Renaissance. It's an epic, and it's the last track on the album. For me, this is Renaissance at their peak. Every track on here is a classic. It's probably one of the most perfect prog albums there is. It always gets forgotten, but I think this is as good as Close to the Edge. It's just an incredible piece of music. I mean, it's an album that's got 3 or 4 songs, but it's 45 minutes long. An incredible piece of music. It's an album that I just love playing, and especially the song of the Scheherazade, which I can't pronounce right. I'm sure someone will correct me. And there's only one mark I can give this album, because it's one of the best prog albums I own, and that's 10 out of 10. So there we go. A really good band. I know there's a lot of people out there that love this band. Okay, normally I'll say that's all for today, but I've got a birthday top 10 to do, and this one is for a musician, a singer, songwriter, and a good artist as well. And that is Stephanie from Echo 7. It's her birthday today, so I'm going to do her top 10, and because she's Canadian, we've got a Canadian top 10. So go and watch that, and then go and give some support to Echo 7. So that's it. I'll be back later with Steph's birthday top 10. So bye for now.